Boxing truth here. I feel like schooling some PBC fanboys. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Al Haymon in the PBC series, as Al Haymon has failed miserably for his master plan to monopolize the boxing game. That was the master plan of Al Haymon's when he first began this new venture of the PBC, when he somehow, some way got to raise over $500 million in capital from some guys in Kansas, from Wild Out and Reed, as they pretty much funded the PBC in hopes of running everybody out of the boxing business in the United States. Pay all these networks time-buy type of deals, exclusive contracts with all these networks that Haymon negotiated time buys for. He will pay the networks, he puts on the product, and then he pays the fighters, turning the business model upside down, where it's the networks that actually pay you for your product, not the other way around, where Haymon is paying the networks for time to put on his product. And according to the fund manager of Wild Out and Reed, well, formerly Ryan Caldwell, he was quoted as saying that the PBC needs to operate at a loss for up to 3 to 5 years in order to weather the storm, as Haymon was going to get a lot of heat from other promoters in the business in the United States, as he was turning the business model upside down. And at first, he did piss everybody off. Haymon got hit with a bunch of lawsuits from rival promoters, most notably Golden Boy Promotions and Top Rank. Golden Boy and Haymon are still in litigation, which is why you won't see any of their fighters fighting each other until that situation gets resolved. But Haymon failed miserably for his master plan to monopolize the sport. He wanted to create a UFC type of model, how the way they operate, as they're a monopolized sport, the UFC, and they pretty much take in all the funds compared to what boxers make. In boxing, well, the fighter's smart enough, they get all the funds. They get the biggest percentage. They get the biggest slice of the pie. In the UFC, it's the other way around because it's a monopolized sport. So they shortchange the fighters. And the fighters have no choice but to take it. Even though it's considerable money, especially what McGregor and Ronda Rousey make. The point is they're getting shortchanged considering the type of numbers, pay-per-view numbers they average. They should be getting a lot more. But because the UFC is monopolized, the athletes have nowhere else to turn to. They have nowhere else to go. So they have to take what they're given. And that was Haymon's plan with the PBC. He was even in the process of creating PBC belts, as he was ignoring the sanctioning bodies when the PBC first debuted. But Haymon and who was ever running the organization of the PBC did a piss poor job. They didn't put on the type of quality matchups needed in order to gain a bigger audience. They didn't really bring in any new fans. They didn't provide the type of ratings that the networks are satisfied with in order to convince them to buy the product instead of being paid to show the product. But for boxing's sake, fighters should not want a monopolized sport. Haymon's not the first guy who's come in with a bunch of money on the table and try to do the same thing he's doing, try to take control of the sport. Plenty have done it in the past, but they have failed. Boxing has never been monopolized. And the fighters, for their sake, they shouldn't want that, as a monopolized sport will determine how much they get paid, and they really will have no say-so. Where else can they turn to if the sport is monopolized? So the ship has sailed for Haymon trying to monopolize boxing, which was his master plan. Was oversaturating the market, was putting on constant shows, was giving away free tickets, toxinating the boxing market, doing much more damage than good because of Haymon's greed of trying to take over the sport and running everybody else out of the business. It backfired. It didn't go according to plan. As Haymon is now being, Wilder and Reed, the company that's funding the PBC, is being sued by the shareholders that invested money into the PBC. As much as almost $1 billion, $925 million, a lawsuit was filed against Wilder and Reed. Because there's been nothing coming in return. There was false promises that there was going to be a big return coming back to the shareholders, as the PBC was going to be operating at a loss for up to 3 to 4 years. But then they will start seeing some money come in, a profit. But it never happened. And now the Wilder Reed is being sued. Haymon is still being sued by Golden Boy, as that litigation case is ongoing. And Haymon has given up trying to monopolize the sport. Now it's not about trying to take over. It's simply trying to keep his PBC afloat and trying to convince the networks into buying his product. But there's just evidence to suggest that it's not going well. There have been cutbacks. The PBC employees are no longer flying on private jets. B-sides to the PBC are not getting paid as they once were. Even name fighters are taking pay cuts within the PBC. And Aram is right. Because of what Haymon did, by providing not many quality matchups or not doing a better job at running this organization of the PBC, other promoters who have better ideas or a better tight ship within their organization, who would think about presenting their product to a network television, to a free network television provider, they're going to go to them and they're going to get turned down because of the type of numbers and ratings the PBC produce with those same networks. The PBC needed to do much better ratings than they generated from many of their fights. I know some PBC fanboys get excited when they see Errol Spence do over 1 million viewers against Chris Algieri, or Deontay Wilder doing 2 million viewers. But those are not good ratings for a free network television. There are canceled television shows that have done more ratings than most of the PBC fights. Canelo Alvarez, the last time he was on HBO, did more ratings than the majority of the PBC shows on a premium cable channel. Imagine if Canelo fought on free network television, how much ratings he would do. But because of Haymon's organization not doing a good job in running the PBC, not great ratings, especially for network television, free network television, other promoters will have no chance at going to those networks like NBC, CBS, and Fox and present their product. They'll simply be turned down. And that's not good for boxing. As I learned more about the PBC, I realized what was there to get excited about. At first, when it was first announced, I was intrigued, I was interested. But then when I found out about their business model, when I found out how they got this upstarted in the first place, I shook my head in disbelief. There's nothing to be excited about when an entrepreneur like Haymon is paying these networks to put on his shit product. You know what excites me? When a network goes to Mr. Haymon and says, any free network television provider goes to Mr. Haymon and says, you know what? We like your product. We want to pay you license fees. We want to pay you to put your product on our airwaves. Now that's exciting. That's an impact on the sport. That's changing the sport because you're getting free network television back to boxing. But for what I'm hearing, doesn't seem like any of those networks are interested in buying Haymon's products, in buying his fights. NBC, I believe, is done this year with their time buy deal. And I'm hearing NBC is not going to be interested in extending or interested in buying Haymon's product. It's not surprising. NBC is just not interested in boxing. They haven't shown much boxing in years. They haven't paid for boxing much in years. ESPN, I'm hearing the same thing. ESPN this year for PBC has been a wasteland. Haymon's been putting on the most undesirable fights on that network because I think he pretty much knows ESPN is not interested in buying his product. They have fights that they have dates until next year that they have to fulfill, but once that contract is out, it seems like ESPN is most likely out, as they're going to be investing in the UFC, not into boxing. Fox has only had not less than a handful of shows for the PBC. Doesn't seem like they're too interested in buying Haymon's product. But I think Spike may be interested. They've overall had a quality of fights. They put on some good fights. There've been some entertaining fights on that network. So maybe Spike may be interested in buying Haymon's product. But that's the goal for Haymon right now. Monopolizing the sport, it didn't work out. It was an interesting endeavor. It was an interesting idea. And Haymon pissed a lot of people off when he tried to flex his muscles and try to take over. He definitely had some people shook. But Bob Arum withdrew his lawsuit. He settled with Haymon because he realized that PBC they weren't accomplishing anything. They spent a lot of money and accomplished very little. And now the goal for Haymon, I believe, is to at least get one or two networks to be interested in buying his product. Because if that doesn't happen, then Haymon's going to have to release a lot of fighters. Because he cannot have all these fighters have no networks to showcase them on. He's already having trouble keeping his fighters active, despite all these networks that he has on exclusive time buy deals. A lot of his fighters are only fighting once or twice a year. He's already having trouble keeping his fighters active. Now imagine if all these networks just say they're not interested in buying his product. Where are his fighters going to go? Showtime only has so many dates. He's got to at least convince one or two networks to buy his product. So in order to he'll be able to keep some of his fighters. He won't have to release a whole group of fighters. But there is some good news for the PBC, as their long negotiated deal to bring the PBC to the UK is in the works. It's not a done deal, and Haymon has yet to give him the green light. but he's in negotiations with ITV over in the UK, a network that has not really shown much boxing in years. They have been into boxing for quite some time, but they've been in talks with Haymon, and they're thinking about putting numerous shows a year. I'm not sure if this is a time by agreement or ITV will be providing license fees, paying Haymon for his product. But I'm interested to see how Heyman's going to make this work, because he doesn't have many UK fighters in his stable. Right now, he has Lee Selby, James DeGale, Amir Khan, and Carl Frampton. And none of those guys, realistically, are going to be headlining a fight in the UK this year if the deal goes through with ITV to bring PBC to the UK. None of those guys will be available for the first headlining debut of PBC in the UK or PBC on ITV. I'm hearing David Haye may be the guy. I don't know what David Haye's situation is. I don't know if he's still affiliated with Haymon. To me, he seems like a lone wolf. He's by himself. He promotes himself. But it is interesting what came up about PBC in the UK. I'm not sure how Haymon makes it work, considering he doesn't have many UK fighters in the stable. But it failed in the United States. The United States market did not respond to the PBC. They didn't provide the viewership to help satisfy the networks and convincing them to buy his product. His master plan failed miserably. He didn't come close to monopolizing the sport. Bob Arum ain't worried about nothing no more, as he settled and is willing to do business with Haymon, but we have yet to see any fights be made between those two entities. But we'll see what happens with those lawsuits between the shareholders and Wilder and Reed, Golden Boy's lawsuit with Haymon, and whether Haymon can convince some of these networks to buy his product, because he's going to need it for his stable of fighters who are currently not as active as they should be. This is Boxing Truth. I'm out.